I don't think there's been a better time in human history for us to create the stuff that we want to create because of the amount of tools, the amount of systems, the amount of capabilities that are at each of our fingertips that create an abundance of opportunities for us to manifest our visions. What's going on, y'all? This is Elijah from Modern Mantra. Welcome to another episode. Before we get into it, I just wanted to quickly share what we've been up to. We have recently iterated our venture design program into a 2.0 version, which is an 8-week program designed to accelerate your journey to impact. So we are working with subject matter experts or experienced entrepreneurs that have deep knowledge of a space or field or market. And we are helping to identify your key tipping point innovation that aligns with your core purpose and aligns with the market needs and sets you up to execute on that in the highest way, using the best technology and using the best systems to iterate towards a great solution. So if that sounds like something that is valuable or something that you or someone you know can use, get in touch with us. Go to our website, modernmantra.co, drop us a line. If you want to learn more about the program specifically, go to lightschool.com/V/A. And if it sounds up your alley, definitely get in touch and we'll go from there. Thank you and enjoy the episode. Peace. Hey, what's up, beautiful people? My name is Elijah from Modern Mantra, and this is the first solo episode that we're doing since we started this podcast. It's either been me and Nick going back and forth, or it's been me or Nick plus a guest. So this is the first time where it's just me, and it feels really nice to just have the space to tune in and to share from an authentic place. And I hope that some of this resonates and lands and provides insight and provides value from taking the time to tune in and to listen to this podcast. And really who I'm recording this for are people that are walking the path of entrepreneurship. And the more that I walk along this journey, I really see entrepreneurship as a vehicle for one to express their dharma, for one to actually express their core purpose, their core reason for being, which I do truly believe that we each possess a unique purpose, a unique dharma, a unique nature of our reality that makes us us. And this unique dharma carries through across lifetimes. And so entrepreneurship is, I find, one of the highest expressions of one's dharma, because what an entrepreneur is saying through their actions is that I am going to double down on myself. And I'm choosing to take this path of following my pursuits, relentlessly following my pursuits in an unbound way. So this is who I'm recording this for, the people that are walking their path and the people that are doubling down on themselves and looking at how to do that in a higher way, in a better way, in a more innovative way. And what I wanted to share about today, something that's been really alive for me, is this notion of abstraction and the notion of meta skills. And if that doesn't mean anything to you right now, hopefully you will know exactly what that means by the time this episode is over. So where I want to start with this is programming. In 2017, that's actually when I met Nick for the first time. I was in Bali and I was there piloting a startup called Troveco. And I was working with these different rice farming villages across the island and really seeing how we can provide travel experiences for people that supported the community truly and provided a really unique travel experience. So what do I mean by that? People would go and stay with these farmers and live with them for days on end to really get a sense of what life is like in someone else's shoes. And the money that the travelers paid went towards the families, and then a portion of that went towards a community fund so that every travel experience that happens, that community fund is building up and gets used to execute community projects. So I was in Bali doing this. I met Nick at a co-working event, at an event at a co-working space, I should say. And I was there piloting this startup, and there came a point where I needed to build a bit more systems behind it. And prior to this point, I was very upstream in terms of where I was on the innovation scale, I would say. And what does that mean? So upstream and downstream innovation, you can think of upstream really as the strategy, right? The foresight, the opportunity spotting, the big picture thinking around innovation and around strategy in general. And you can think of downstream at the most downstream level is literally hands-on building of something, hands-on generation of innovation. So now you can see this kind of scale of upstream and downstream innovation. Prior to this point, I was very upstream. I was very strategic, and that was my background. That's what I was doing. A lot of design thinking, a lot of design sprints, a lot of working with big multinational organizations to help them essentially track the future, help them identify opportunity areas, help them understand both insight and foresight to drive new product innovation. So I found myself in Bali doing this startup. I meet Nick at this co-working event at the same time that I need to kind of get a platform going. And Nick introduces me to programming. It was the first time that I've ever seen lines of code in my life. I knew, obviously, because I was already in the tech space, but more upstream, I knew that there was code behind all of this stuff. I just never looked under the hood and saw the code myself. And Nick was the first person that showed me programming languages and coding. And I started to get really into it. He gave me his Egghead logins, and I went in and started teaching myself React, which is a JavaScript framework, a front-end JavaScript framework, or library, rather, component-based JavaScript library. And I went in and was just learning that. And I noticed that my social life began to dwindle a little bit because I was so into it. I guess I was going down the rabbit hole, as they say. And eventually I decided that I wanted to accelerate my path to learn programming just in a higher way, in a faster way, and actually learn how to apply this really to what I'm doing. And I knew that the path to accelerated coding was not by me sitting in my room, it was by getting some hands-on training from experts. And so I went to a coding boot camp in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil in 2017. And it was a 9-week boot camp with a company called Lewagon. At the time, they were the top-rated coding boot camp in the world, and they still are. So now you're going to see how this connects to this concept of abstraction, and then you'll see how the concept of abstraction connects to meta skills. And then you will hopefully, through all of this, see why abstraction and meta skills are important for us to understand and for us to start talking about. So when I went to this coding bootcamp, I learned full stack web development, primarily learned it using a web framework called Ruby on Rails. And yes, of course, learned the front end languages, the JavaScript, the HTML, the CSS, etc. But really the back end architectural and infrastructural language that I was learning was Ruby, and the framework that I was learning was called Ruby on Rails. the only reason why this coding bootcamp was able to produce web developers in 9 weeks, even if you had no prior experience, the only reason they were able to do that was because of Ruby on Rails. So what was special about Ruby on Rails? It was the most abstracted coding, the most abstracted web development framework that existed at the time. So now let's talk about what abstraction is. Abstraction in software development, in programming, in engineering, this concept of abstraction is when the complexities of a system are removed from the end user. So you can think of abstraction as a scale, and as we go up in that scale, more of the details and more of the complexities of any given system are not revealed to the user. So, for example, now in 2023, I don't need to really know what's under the hood of a car to be able to drive the car, right? A lot of the mechanical intricacies have been abstracted away, but I imagine that when cars first hit the market post horses, right? Like cars were the iteration of horses for transportation. And I imagine there was an early stage of automobiles in which, in order to drive the car, you needed to have an understanding of how the mechanics of the vehicle worked. Surely much more than we need to know today, right? So a lot of this complexity has been abstracted away. Even now with automatic cars, I don't even need to know how to shift gears. And I actually don't know how to shift gears. I don't know how to drive a manual because it's been automated. It's been abstracted away. So Ruby on Rails, it was at the highest level of abstraction at the time. You know, now we're living in a time where we have Bubble and Zapier and all of these no-code tools. But at that time, Ruby on Rails was the pinnacle of abstraction when it came to web development, but like real web development. We're not talking about websites. We're talking about building full-scale applications, which Ruby on Rails is fully capable of. So this is the only reason why Le Wagon was able to teach people how to code in 9 weeks, was because of this framework Ruby on Rails, because of the level of abstraction. It removed a lot of the complexity that someone would need to know previously to be able to build these same applications. And so I'm going to give you a little technical knowledge, and I'm going to try to explain it in the simplest way. But everything in the way that we use the internet, in the way that, pretty much in the way that the internet works, the way that code is executed, everything currently, until we evolve to quantum computing or some next generation of computing, everything up until now compiles down to binary code. So what does that mean? All of the code that gets executed across all of the programs that we use, it boils down to a physical server somewhere in the world where it boils down to a series of zeros and ones, which is binary code. This is like the root of code. This is the same stuff that we were using to transmit messages in World War II, right? This was like binary code. And so here we are in 2017, coding in Ruby on Rails, executing functions through the web, and all of that code that gets executed, it still compiles down to those base level zeros and ones to actually execute on these certain functions. Now, some programming languages have faster compiling, some are a bit slower, but anything that we're using today, mostly any web developer, any software engineer, unless you're doing pretty hardcore rocket science or like aerospace, really deep engineering, everyone's using a highly abstracted programming language, right? I don't know of anyone that's writing in binary code. And I know very few people that are writing in low-level coding languages, like C. C is a low-level coding language that's used a lot in aerospace, etc. Now, if you look at C at this low level of coding, you have Ruby on Rails that's at this really higher level of coding, a more abstracted level of coding. So I hope that this concept of abstraction is starting to make some sense. And so why do I bring up abstraction now? If I learned Ruby on Rails in 2017, it's a programming concept. Why is it relevant? Abstraction is relevant because it is what's happening across the technological landscape in general, right? So for example, well, before the example, I just want to preface by saying I don't think there's been a better time in human history for us to create the stuff that we want to create because of the amount of tools, the amount of systems, the amount of capabilities that are at each of our fingertips that create an abundance of opportunities for us to manifest our visions. So in this day and age, right, I can take a really nice photo with my iPhone and I can click a magic wand button when I go to edit that photo and it just enhances the photo, right? Previously, somebody would need to take that photo, develop the film. I don't even know how you post-edit developed film because obviously I'm not a photographer. But the point that I'm making here is that it was a much more complicated process prior. And now a lot of that complexity has been abstracted away and we can click a button and get some beautiful enhancements on our photo, right? So this is the equivalent of the high-level Ruby on Rails coding framework. We're seeing that happening across the board. We're able to edit videos and we're able to create music just from our laptop versus previously you would need a lot of equipment and a studio to create music. So in essence, things are becoming more accessible to everyday users, right? We no longer need to be super technically versed in any one field to be able to produce in that field, right? So I don't need to know how to do all of the photography stuff to be able to take beautiful photos. I don't need to know how to do all of the binary code to be able to build web applications. I don't need to know how to drive a manual or know what's under the hood for me to drive my automatic RAV4 and get from point A to point B. So we're just on this trajectory that's been persisting for a very long time in humanity where things are becoming more and more abstract. And what that means is that things are becoming more and more accessible. And so this brings me to the notion of meta skills. So you can think of, when you think of skills, things that come to mind might be something like software engineering. And I'm just thinking of digital skills, right? Software engineering, UX design, graphic design, copywriting, right? These are typically roles that I've worked a lot with in just the product realm and the tech startup realm. And so when we think of skills, these are types of things that come to mind. So what are meta skills? Meta skills are higher order skills, right? So when you think of a meta anything, or the root word, the root definition of meta, a meta skill is really a higher order skill that, so for example, I'm trying to figure out the best way to explain this. So for example, systems thinking is a meta skill, right? Systems thinking is very different than software engineering, right? Systems thinking is a higher order skill, and systems thinking is relevant across software engineering, across UX design, across entrepreneurship, right? Like it has many different applications because it's a higher order skill. And we have, problem solving is a meta skill that we see a ton of use cases for across the spectrum of how skills can be applied in our everyday life. And so meta skills are important to bring into focus in today's day and age because a lot of these technical skills are going to completely evolve. And a lot of the technical skills that we know today are going to completely evaporate and become redundant or become irrelevant just because of the evolution of our technological landscape. So when we see everything that's currently happening with artificial intelligence, this is like abstraction on steroids, right? Because now I can put a prompt into ChatGPT and create an entire blog post. And not only can I create that entire blog, and that's a very simple example of what you can do with ChatGPT. But not only can I create that blog post, I can be very specific about the tone of voice that I want it to be written in. I could choose my favorite author's voice to write it in. Alternatively, I can program an AI very easily with my own previous writing samples and have it generate blog posts and articles that are written in my style. So now I don't even need to have this skill of being able to structure sentences and structure paragraphs and structure narratives. I just need to know how to prompt the language learning model to, or the LLM, essentially the GPT in this case, to create me this blog post or this article, right? I no longer need to actually know how to structure sentences or weave together words that sound good because I can just tell it what I want it to create, right? So this is like abstraction on steroids that we are now entering into. And we're not that far off from being able to do the same thing with applications on the web, mobile applications, web applications, just like we're doing with websites. So I'm sure you're familiar with Squarespace or with Wix or whatever other website builder drag and drop interfaces you have. It makes it incredibly simple to build and deploy websites, which just was not the case at all 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, you had to really know what you were doing to create and deploy and host a website. Now, you go on Squarespace, you make an account, you can drag and drop some stuff and click publish, and you have a website. Right? So we are in this stage where it's abstraction on steroids. And in this age of abstraction on steroids, what becomes important when certain skills evaporate, right? When I no longer need to know how to code to develop applications, when I no longer need to know how to edit photos to generate beautiful photos, when I no longer need to know how to structure sentences or paragraphs to be able to write beautiful stories, when I no longer need to know how to design screens and interfaces to create a beautiful product design, when I no longer need to know how to play any instruments or use my voice at all to create beautiful sonic landscapes and music. Right? So what happens in this world when different sorts of technical skills evaporate? The meta skills are what remain, and the meta skills will continuously be important, right? Like meta skills that we talk about when we think of, I'd say, empathy is a meta skill, being able to cultivate empathy. I'd say systems thinking is a meta skill. I would say problem solving is a meta skill. These are things that are going to persist over time. These are higher order skills that regardless of how the landscape of tech evolves, regardless of how the skills of humanity evolve, doubling down on these meta skills are going to inevitably be valuable. Because if you are an incredible problem solver and you don't know how to program, just wait 2 years and you'll be able to build programs almost instantaneously. And if you know how to problem solve, then you can apply that same meta skill to be able to solve problems in the market. And now there's no gap between your idea that you want to put out, your solution that you want to put out to solve a problem, and manifesting that idea or that solution. Right? So really, as we move up the scale of abstraction, the gap between having an idea and executing on that idea is diminishing, and there will be a point where that is completely eliminated and we enter a world of instant digital manifestation, right? And what that means is that we can create anything digitally, instantly. And to take it a step further with this exercise that we're going through, with this thought wave that we're navigating, we are also, so you have AI that is driving an entire platform shift. It's totally fundamentally shifting our human landscape of how we interact, how we think, how we build, how we create, how we collaborate as humans. Another platform shift that is on the horizon that I'm quite excited about, Modern Mantra's quite excited about, and Nick's been singing the praises of for years now, is extended reality, right? So this includes mixed reality, virtual reality, and augmented reality. And if you don't know what those terms mean, virtual reality, this is the MetaQuest Pro. These are the Oculus Rifts, right? These are the immersive experiences where you enter an immersive landscape that is kind of just like a three-dimensional movie theater, right? So you enter a virtual space. That's VR. Augmented reality is layering on the digital objects onto the physical landscape, right? So when you use a Instagram filter, that's augmented reality. Now, mixed reality is when we are able to interact, when digital components and digital objects are able to interact with physical objects and components and landscapes, right? So being able to recognize the landscape around it, that this is a tree, this is a car, this is a road, this is a human, this is this specific human, and because of this specific human, I want to have this specific interaction. So mixed reality is more of the interactive element between the digital and the physical. Augmented is more of the overlay, and virtual is more of the immersive space. All of these encompass what is called extended reality. So I see extended reality as another platform shift that's on the horizon. I don't know exactly what the time scale of that horizon is, but I'd make a bet that within the next 5 years, we will be experimenting at scale with three-dimensional user interfaces. Because that's what augmented and mixed reality is. It's a three-dimensional user interface. So right now, when I look at the screen, when I look at Instagram, when I look at my phone, when I look at my computer, it's a two-dimensional interface, right? It's just flat and it's two-dimensional. The evolution of user interfaces are going to evolve into the third dimension, and that evolution is driven by extended reality, right? When we're no longer looking at these boxes and these flat screens, but we're actually layering on and having interactions with physical and digital, and then planet Earth becomes the interface, the designable canvas, right? I hope that this is making sense in some way and that you're keeping up or able to follow this thought exercise. Because now we're talking about two different platform shifts, right? One is very current, and I believe that the tools that we are creating today are the most powerful tools that humans have ever created. And these tools that we are creating are going to unlock more, it's going to supercharge and accelerate the rate at which we reach new innovations and reach new heights and reach new platform shifts. So that's a whole other mind roller coaster to navigate, is that this platform shift of AI is going to unlock even more big shifts and big innovations than we've ever seen, not only in our lifetime, but in human history, right? And then you have this other thing that's coming, that's kind of on the horizon, that is going to bring user interfaces into the third dimension. So now when we go back to this idea of instant digital manifestation, and you combine that with extended reality and three-dimensional interfaces, the capabilities that we're going to be able to have in terms of what we can create when we can actually innovate the speed of thought, right? And be able to do that in the third dimension digitally. That's going to be a wild world. And still, in that world, these meta skills remain relevant, right? What are those skills? What are those human skills, those human truths that stand the test of time, that will persist and will continue to be valuable, not only in this economy, but in our lives throughout all of these technological evolutions? It is the meta skills. It are the very things that make us human. The very meta skills that were used by our ancestors for hundreds of thousands of years are the same meta skills that are still relevant today. And really, these are all, there are the meta skills that I named, like problem solving and systems thinking and empathy. Even if you just look at those three, these are really some core pillars of innovation in general. When you think about our ancestry up until now, all of these components that we're talking about, being able to, like, systems thinking is being able to see the interconnectedness between different components in a system, right? Being able to see the relationships between things. Empathy, being able to put myself in someone else's shoes. Problem solving, being able to see things in a solution-oriented way and think strategically about solutions to problems. These are all things that our ancestors used to innovate. And these are things that we are going to continue to use to innovate. And so this is really an invitation for you to tune in to what it is that you want to create, because we are living in a time of abundance in terms of our ability to create and our ability to manifest our visions. And this gap between idea and manifestation is going to continue to diminish, meaning that this is really the time, if you've been waiting to do a thing or been putting something off or saying, when I get this promotion, I'm going to leave my job and do this thing, or like having these arbitrary timelines. This is a great time to create anything that you want to create. And this is a great time to begin getting familiar with these tools and technologies that are available. And it's also a great time to really tune in to our center, because I feel like the most powerful and prosperous place that we can be in 2023 is to be building and creating from our innermost center on the cutting edge, right? So really what we're talking about are these platform shifts on the forefront of how we think, how we live, how we organize as humanity, that is being driven by these technologies. And I think the most powerful place to be is to be able to build from your center on the cutting edge. And so this is a great time to both hone some meta skills, and you probably already are really good at some core meta skills. It's just about discovering and thinking in terms of meta skills, thinking in terms of the higher order skills that are going to persist throughout time in this human landscape. So tuning into those, creating what you want to create, getting familiar with these technologies and tools that are and capabilities that are now available to us, and getting in touch with your center and creating from that place. This is a very exciting time that we are in on planet Earth. And also that when I say that, I also must say that it's also very trying times for humanity when we look at all of the atrocities that humankind has brought about. And now we combine the worst of humanity with the best of technology, right? Just as easily as we can combine the best of humanity with the best of technology. And particularly, I share this and I share all of this for the people that have good intentions with the technology and want to combine the best of humanity with the best of technology. So hopefully now you have an understanding of what meta skills are, you have an understanding of what abstraction is, and now you can really see what's happening in our human landscape in the context of abstraction, and be able to think about what that means for you, what that means for your business, what that means for your future. Thank you so much for listening. I'm sending you my love